Welcome to the IonaHoops.com podcast with your host, Guy Flatico.
What's up, Gale Nation? Season 5, Episode 6, the IonaHoops.com podcast. It's back. Here we are. Games are coming up, and we've got a busy episode. But before we get into that, hey, like and subscribe wherever you listen to this, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple, wherever it is. Like and subscribe because then it makes it look like I have listeners. Anyway, busy episode. We've got one important Iona. We've got an offer roundup with no actual offers to talk about. I'll explain later. We have the state of the Gales back as we'll take a look at our first two games at Princeton and Hofstra. And then we're going to have, well, a man who wrote 30,000 words on the MAAC. That's all I need to say. Do I need to say any more than that? Sam Federman is back on the podcast, and he will help us preview the MAAC season to come. And right now, we're going to jump into the Iona Iotas.
Iona Iotas.
Welcome to Iona Gavin Hightower. Yes, folks, he was the one we were waiting on. Remember a couple episodes back when I kind of had a very clumsy Iona Iota noting that a commitment was coming? Well, this is it. Gavin's big time. He's a 6'1" point guard out of the Windward School, transferring to Sierra Canyon in California. He's the number 141 rated recruit in the country on 247, 4-star player in ESPN, 3 stars on 247, offers from Cal, Washington State, New Mexico, quite a few others, mostly schools out west, averaged 15.7 assists last season. If you go check out his highlight video, he has an unbelievable ability to finish at the rim. Can almost contort himself to get shots off against anyone. It's fun to watch. And he's going to be a lot of fun in Tobin's system for sure. Again, welcome to Iona, Gavin Hightower. And what other new Gales might be on the way? How about an offer roundup?
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
So 2026 guard Jalen Grant, unofficial visit earlier this week to Iona. He's a 6-foot point guard out of Roselle Catholic and PSA Cardinals, 4 stars on ESPN, 3 stars on On3. He has older offers from Seton Hall, Providence, Auburn, Kansas State, more recent offers from a host of mid-majors. He's a traditional point guard known for a great handle and speed and on-ball D. Again, just earlier this week, an unofficial visit. I don't see any online evidence that we actually offered him, but maybe we did during the unofficial visit. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens there. He looks like a fun player to watch. 2027 guard Shane Seymour from Brooklyn Collegiate. He was at Maroon Madness last week. He's a physical 6'4" guard, high IQ, tough kid, just 15 years old still, but one of the top New York City prospects of the 2027 class. Like Jalen Grant, I don't see an evidence of an offer, but he was at Maroon Madness nonetheless. Sounds like his recruitment's going to blow up as he gets older and grows even more into his body because this kid is just 15 and he's put together. So let's see what happens with his recruitment and stay tuned for more updates on the recruiting trail. And now we get to the state of the Gales. So the Gales open up against 2 tough opponents on the road. Thankfully, no flights here. These are games that fans can get to. Let's do this, people. But let's talk about our opponents. The first one is Princeton. Hey, this team was no joke last year, people. 24-5 last year. 3 starters are back. They were upset by Brown in the Ivy semi, so they're on a mission. Reigning Ivy Player of the Year is back. It's Caden Pierce, back for his senior year. He's 17 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists a game. Junior point guard Xavion Lee is also back for them. He's 17 points, 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists. They also have Blake Peters back from last year's team, 8 points per game. So they have a core of returning guys. They know what they are already, unlike us. Certainly they're going to be on a mission. They're going to be favored in this game by double figures or thereabouts. Ken Palm has this as a 13-point loss for us. I think the Vegas line will be a little less than that. This is still Princeton basketball. They score points. They make shots. They play smart. They limit turnovers. Oh, and I'm serious about the limiting turnovers. They were number 1 in the country in terms of turnover rate, turnover percentage versus possession. So they're the real deal there. They also make free throws. So all that package on offense was to the tune of the 29th most efficient offense in the country last year. So this game is no joke. It's going to be a real test for us on the road. Talk more about that in a minute, in terms of what we might be able to expect as fans. Well, what we're going to be taking on in Game 2 are the Hofstra Gales. Apparently, they were 20-13 last year. Beat us in New Rochelle by 5 a year ago. Beat us by 5 out at Hofstra the year before that. Remember last year they had a great weapon in Tyler Thomas. He's one of the most fun players you get to see. He's gone now though, and so are a lot of the other guys. And like I said, they're the Hofstra Gales now. Oh yeah, you knew they had Silas Sunday last year. He went there after leaving the Gales. But now they picked up Cruz Davis from St. John's, I guess. But Iona, of course, before that. Had a cup of coffee there for Rick Pitino. That's about it. And then Gino Nguyen, who we were all hoping that would stick around for us, is now playing for the Pride. So, yeah, the Hofstra Gales it is. Anyway, they're a little more known commodity in that sense, but, how does Speedy Claxton put all these pieces together? And without, again, the weapon that they had in Tyler Thomas last year, time's going to tell. But we know that Hofstra's a good program, so it's going to be another tough test, especially on the road. So what can we expect in these games? And how should we feel about it based on the results? Well, I'm going to talk about Princeton first. I-59 Iona message board is Don Short. If you're an Iona fan, you probably know who he is. He's asked me several times, hey, why doesn't Tobin schedule exhibition games? Well, my mind, this is somewhat intentional because how does Princeton scout us right now? Yeah, they know a bunch of our players, but there's no tape. There's no film to watch on how to prepare. Yeah, they can see some clips on the new guys or where they were before. But, how do you put them into Tobin's system? Yeah, you can watch some old Tobin clips and know what Tobin's system looks like. And that's probably what they're doing. They're piecing it together. But, let's face it, the element of surprise is a factor here. I mean, there's no way to truly prepare for what we are at this moment. That, to me, is a cause for optimism. Now, you guys are going to remember the Charleston game a year ago. I think it's the same scenario. We were a whole new roster going on the road against a really high quality mid-major program, and we almost won the game. Granted that didn't trigger a tremendous season for us, but that doesn't mean this year is going to go that way, people. So don't go that way. But I do think there's an element of surprise here in terms of what Princeton is going to have to do to prepare for us. And I think this could turn into a game where we're going to have a shot at winning, which would be something special considering this is probably the best team on our schedule. And I'm including West Virginia when I say that. So we'll find out about that for sure. But anyway, I'm confident about that game for sure. Hofstra game, hey, it's a rivalry game. It's going to be tough. Same deal, though. Hofstra has some questions. They're trying to figure stuff out. We're going to be trying to figure it out, too. It's going to be a good game, I have a feeling. And again, it's a game we're capable of winning. Got some tough ones after this one. Home against Delaware, home against Vermont's in there. At West Virginia, aforementioned West Virginia is in there. Home versus Cornell. So there's a chance, people, that we might not have the greatest non-conference record. You've heard me talk about this with some of the other guests we've had on the podcast. You're going to hear me talk about it with Sam Federman, too. What does it mean if we don't get off to the best start in terms of our record? I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of these teams that we're playing are better than anyone in the MAAC. Now, does that automatically translate to us blowing the MAAC away? No, of course not. But the schedule is built. We've been telling you, you've heard Tobin say this, you've heard me say this. It was built to make us prepared for the MAAC. It's preparing, so we purposely scheduled harder than MAAC level so that we would be better by the time we got to those games. Whether that translates to a whole bunch of wins in the MAAC, we're going to find out. But what I'm saying, though, is keep a level head. There's a lot of people or a lot of fans last year that, hey, we were under 500. A lot of fans were disappointed. They don't like the NIL era, and I've seen a lack of interest in the program. I think everybody's kind of, let's just see what happens, there. And so I'm hoping that people see a great performance against Princeton and they're like, and then they see a good performance against Hofstra and go, and not necessarily pin their emotions on W's and L's. Yeah, of course everybody wants to win. That's a given. But if we lose two nail biters in these two games, and let's just assume, let's just say that might happen. You know, does that mean that you guys should all start to bail again? No, of course not. Be patient. Okay. This is not the way that basketball has been in the past where, you used to have guys come back. You had a system in place and all that. We're building from scratch every year. It's the NIL era. And again, Hofstra's doing it too. So we're going to have to just kind of see how all of it pans out. I'm just saying, try to keep your emotions in check. Try to not bail on the program if we don't start off as well as you think, because Princeton is so much better than anybody in the MAAC. I can't even begin. We can put together a MAAC all-star team out of the other 12 teams in the MAAC, and it won't be as good as Princeton. All right. So, I mean, be realistic and just kind of go in and look for things that you see as Tobin tries to build this program into something that we all hope it's going to be. That's all. And we will catch up again on the next episode of this podcast, which will be after the Hofstra game. Now, if we're 0-2, maybe I'll be grumbling too. I don't know, but maybe not. So let's just see how it plays out before, and maybe let's see some games go by before you make a judgment on anything. And that goes for me too. But I'm just asking you anybody who's listening to this, I'm hoping you take that approach as well. Let's let it play out a bit and not form any kind of opinion. Even if we beat Princeton and Hofstra to start the season, which again, I'm saying is possible, it doesn't mean anything in terms of where we're going to be just yet. Just let it play out a bit. And that's a great way to take us into Sam Federman. MAAC preview season is well underway here on this podcast, and what better way to continue it than with our sicko, Sam Federman, who wrote just about 30,000. Wait, now if you're going to write almost 30,000 words, why not just get to 30,000, Sam?
I thought I was going to get there, but I didn't get enough quotes from coaches on other teams, so I didn't have enough room to get there. I just decided to scrap the MAAC coaches are saying section, which was a fun part to have over the last couple of years. But...
Yeah. So first of all, let's get a little more on this. How long did it actually take you to put this together? I mean, do you have a general idea of how many hours?
I've been writing for 2 months. Well, I've been doing interviews for 2 months. I started writing about a month and a half ago. I wrote like a couple paragraphs before I went to Paris, came back from Paris around September 8th, and then kind of kicked into full gear around then. So each team probably takes about 5 total hours to write. So this probably took me around 90 hours total.
That is pretty good considering that nobody gave you a check to do it.
When you include a lot of other stuff, that like the creating the PDF, scheduling everything. So about 85 to 90 hours total, I would say. I know that math is going to sound crazy, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive in a little bit here. So I'm going to warn you out of the gate. I actually got some chirping from my Iona fans because I had us third and only going 13-7 in the MAAC. You have Iona fourth. So let's go over your standings real quick. Your projections. Like everybody else, Quinnipiac first, Merrimack second. That is aligned with my pick as well. Marist third, Iona fourth, Ryder fifth, Siena sixth. Wow, we'll talk about that. St. Peter's seventh, Fairfield eighth, Manhattan ninth, Sacred Heart 10th, Niagara 11, Mount St. Mary's 12th, Canisius 13th. I think a lot of people have had generally the same top 5-ish type teams out there. So let's spend some time on those top 5. Go ahead and give us your thoughts on Quinnipiac and Merrimack and Marist.
Well, I mean, I have Amari Monroe as my preseason player of the year. I think he's a unique athlete for this level. The length is there, the size, and then just the ability to handle the basketball, shoot from the outside, and be as physical down low as he is. He can play as a small 5. He won't have to do that because they have Paul Otieno, who's tremendous, but he can play in a lot of different spots. Then Savion Lewis, who is the best point guard as a passer in the conference. That I think everyone can agree he's the best passer maybe in the entire Northeast. at the mid-major level. Incredible. I said this on the space. His pocket passing might be the best micro skill in the conference. He's tremendous. Tom Pecora did an excellent job with them last year. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. I love that freshman class too. I think it gives them a really good chance to be competitive down the road. And I think Ritvo and Randall will be impactful right away. Maybe Zimmerman too. I like Merrimack a lot. The zone is obviously the zone. It's going to be confusing for some MAAC teams in year one, as it was confusing for NEC teams in year 5. It's a really good defensive scheme that works at this level. You don't need crazy length to do it. They don't have crazy length. They have a 5'10" point guard and what I project as maybe also playing him with Malik Edmead, who's 6 feet, who's not even 6 feet. Buddy Clark is probably the best guy to give the ball to in this conference if you need a big shot late. He stepped in immediately last year as the second option to Jordan Durkak and was incredibly clutch in late game scenarios. I was very close to picking him as my preseason player of the year. Maybe the most underrated player in the MAAC in the preseason talks is Matt Becht. Haven't seen a lot of people talk about him, but made 143s last year at a 40+% clip. They've also got Brian Atumnu, who is just a stellar defender, 6'7", crazy length. They're going to want to play him on the wing a little bit more, but he is a 5 for their zone. He can play on the wing because they also have David Murray. They brought in Sean Trumper. Devin Savage is back. I think this is a really good team. And then Marist. You asked why I have Marist ahead of Iona. Well, you didn't ask, but it's kind of implied that you're going to ask. Just simply, they bring more back, and we know more. They bring back 4 key contributors in Collins Roberts, Josh Pasquarelli, Jaden Daughtry, and Jackson Price. It's not 4 starters because Max Allen started over Jackson Price, and Max Allen was very good. But Marist was better with Jackson Price on the floor. Obviously, I think part of that was because of what they were doing with Max Allen on the floor. They're going to be a little more perimeter-oriented this year. They're going to go back to a little more 5-out this year. I think they're going to shoot the ball a little bit better this year because they brought in some guys like Elijah Lewis and the other transfers they brought in. Macri can shoot the ball. Kawa and Roberts. Those guys are all guys that they want shooting the ball. And then you've got the guys back that I mentioned earlier. I think that Marist is a little more of a sure thing than Iona right now. I don't want to make the same mistake that I did with Iona last year when I picked them first, kind of blindly, just on the fact that I like Tobin a lot, and I still do, and I like the talent a lot, which, again, I do again this year. I think this team's going to be better than last year, but I can't say that I'm higher on them preseason than I was last year. I was wrong about them in the preseason. They were not the best team in the conference.
Okay. Quick question on Quinnipiac before we leave those top 3. Again, a lot of people had Ryder picked first last year. You did not, but a lot of people did. And they didn't. So if Quinnipiac doesn't finish first, what happened? What went wrong?
I think that maybe Matt Blanc was harder to replace than we thought. And his presence made the game easier for guys like Monroe, Otieno, and Lewis than we realized. And I also think that it would probably mean Ryan Mabry as a transfer just didn't hit the way that they thought he was going to. Maybe the freshmen couldn't really make an impact and they were pretty thin and they end up dropping outside of the top 3. It's certainly possible. I wouldn't bet on it.
Okay. All right. Well, and obviously if Quinnipiac doesn't finish first, you sound like a big fan of Merrimack and Marist. So,
yeah. I actually like the league this year. The only team that I look at the league and I see 12 teams that I think have a chance to finish in the top 8. I'm not high on Canisius. I think that they're a year away. But again, I see 12 teams that have a chance to finish in the top 8. I didn't know which 8 I was going to pick where. And only 10 teams make the tournament. But again, I will say the top of the league is good. It's not as good as it probably has been in other years. It's probably about as good as it was last year, which is not good because the top of last year's league was fun with Quinnipiac and Fairfield, but it was not good. It was about 180 in the Ken Palm rankings, and we want to be in the 120s with our top teams.
No doubt. No doubt. All right. Let's take a quick look at, we'll definitely spend more time on Iona, but let's go through your all MAAC teams. First teams, you've got the aforementioned Amari Monroe, Savion Lewis from Quinnipiac, Bud Clark, Biggie Patterson, and Jaden Collins-Roberts from Marist. Quickly, I'll just hit second team and then I'll ask you a question. Second team is Otieno, Dejour Reeves, Justice Shows from Siena, Tanner Thomas, Sacred Heart, Jaden Winston, Manhattan. Some folks are feeling like hey, if you average 15 points in D1 basketball, it makes perfect sense that you'd be first team. You're going with the D2 kid over Dejour Reeves. What makes you so sure about that?
I just look at a 6'7" bruising scoring wing that's really athletic and has seen the number and has been the number one option at a place that won as a more sure bet than a 6 foot scoring guard that's not really that much of a playmaker and had to. Well, okay, he was a playmaker at JUCO, but he's always been a scoring guard first. And I know he played at the D1 level, but he also, when he was on the floor and St. Thomas was not, that was Northern Colorado's superstar that's now at USC. That offense took a dip, and I think Biggie Patterson is kind of he's not St. Thomas, but I've mentioned this. He is that type of 6'7" score from anywhere bruiser guy. He's got deep range. He can get to the basket. He's been the number one option. He knows what it's like to be the focus of the defense. I think he can kind of mimic that type of role that gives Dejour Reeves the ability to score off the ball, and he'll score on the ball too. I wouldn't be surprised if Dejour Reeves is a first teamer and Biggie's a second teamer. If Dejour is a first teamer, Biggie's a third teamer. Biggie's a first teamer, Dejour's a third teamer. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them doesn't make it. I think that it's a crapshoot, just throwing dice right now.
Sure.
But I think Biggie right now, I like the skill set a little bit more. At 6'7", the ability to rebound, probably a better defender too.
All right. You're all, just to finish us off, all MAAC third team, you have Josh Pasquarelli from Maris, Zion Cruz Rider, Javon Irvin from Mount St. Mary's, Matt Beck, you mentioned already, from Merrimack, Dion Perry from Fairfield. I'd like to spend a moment on your all rookie team. William Sindor from Manhattan, Evan Vanderplas from Canisius, Braylon Ritvo, Quinnipiac, mentioned him already, Niall Ralph Byer from Sacred Heart, and then Adam, and here's the way to pronounce his last name. I learned this recently. Jai. The N is silent. Adam Jai. Thoughts on? I know you got to see Adam in person. What did you think?
I mean, he's really fast. I mean, and we know that about Adam Jai. And they played such a weird. It was a really weird look that they had at Cardinal Hayes last year because they didn't really have bigs, and he was often one of the taller guys on the floor for them, but he was still handling the ball. And he had to play in a lot of uncomfortable situations. So it made him a lot better as a player because he had to play against really tough teams. But he is really fast. He's got really active hands on defense, good playmaker, can really get to the basket.
All right. MAAC all defensive team. Otieno from Quinnipiac, Edmund, I'm going to say his name right. It's Humnu from Merrimack. Yeah. I had to make sure I was saying that right. Mario Monroe, Quinnipiac, Michael Ojo, Siena, and Jalen Barr from Iona. We didn't get to see him practice, but you're going based on the rep at a D2 level for him.
And also just what I watched on film. This guy is a workhorse on that end. I don't even have him in my projected starting lineup, and I don't have Ojo in my projected Siena starting lineup. I just think that they're going to be too good to keep off the floor defensively because of what they can do guarding multiple positions. Ojo, obviously, more so guarding multiple positions than Barr. Although Barr can guard multiple positions, it's more of a backcourt. He's fast. He's strong. I talked to Tobin. Tobin said that we can't put him on the ball to guard their best guy because he's just that good on the ball. Sorry, just that good off the ball. So he's going to be doing both of those. He's going to be guarding best players, and he's going to be playing off the ball, mirroring a lot of other guys. I just think that what he brings to the table is so valuable on that end. He'll end up playing 20, 25 minutes a game, even if he doesn't start. And Ojo the same way, because he can play at the 3, the 4, or the 5.
All right. And just to wrap up your preseason honors, some of the awards here. You said, like you said, a Murray Monroe Player of the Year. You have Tumnu as Defensive Player of the Year, Biggie as Newcomer of the Year, and Freshman of the Year is William Sindor. So let's go to let's rewind back to August. We were watching Iona's open practice. You had a lot of random thoughts that night. You were kind of shouting out, but so let's go back to that night and share some high level thoughts about what you saw that night that you liked, and maybe some things you didn't like.
They were big. They were physical. I just thought that the way Iona played, it looked a lot more like a winning basketball team because they were just going at it with each other. They weren't afraid. They weren't afraid of each other. And after that, Tobin said, "Oh yeah, we're going to inflict harm on the MAAC. These guys, they're like defensive linemen." He was talking about Clarence Rupert and Yafet Mundi, but also the other guys on this roster. When you look at guys like Jalen Barr, they're really physical on the defensive end too. And with Patterson didn't even practice that day, but I think he can be really physical on that end. And I was impressed with Luke Jungers in that practice too, as a change of pace big. So I think that Iona has a lot of different ways they can line up, and I don't think that they are looking at anything in a way of, oh, we are going to be soft. We're going to get punked out of this game, because they got punked a whole couple times last year, and I don't see that happening this year. I see them doing the punking.
Okay. Did you see anything that made you kind of like go, not sure if this is going to be a problem or not?
I mean, in that one small practice, DeJour Reeves didn't really look all that great. But again, that was 2 months before this. It's 3 months before the season. It was a long time ago. It was one practice. It was at night, so not on their usual schedule. And it was like 45 minutes. So I'm not really, I didn't really put any stock into like a guy having a bad day.
All right. So the biggest topic on the Iona message board in the past couple of months has been who's going to start for Iona and who's going to play a lot. I asked Tobin about the size of his rotation. I think he's going to shoot for 9 or 10 guys. But let's look at your starting lineup for the Gales. You have 3 guys that we all have, and that's DeJour, Biggie, and Clarence Rupert. You have Mundi starting, and then you have Jai starting. Did you have any other considerations in there did you argue with yourself over some of that?
Yeah, I argued whether he wanted to play Winborn over Jai as like, all right, let's kind of go with the experience. Then again, Winborn, he hasn't played in a year. So how much is that more valuable is his experience? I didn't really argue it, but I think you can go no Yafet, Mundi, and then slide in Jalen Barr, move Biggie to the 4. I think that's fair. I think by the end of the year, JoJo Wallace is really going to be playing a lot. I think Jungers is gonna have to play, and then I really don't know if we're gonna see Bundy, if we're gonna see a Muabor, because I think those guys are good enough to play. I just don't know where the minutes are going to come from for them.
Okay. And to your point, when I met with Tobin before media day, I asked him those same questions. I mean, what kind of rotations are you working on? And obviously he's going to go small at times too, where you'll see somebody like Barr at the 4, or he actually cited Emubor at the 4. I mean, he might go small and try to run a little more with a lineup like that. So I could just depend on the opponent, could be depend on who's got the hot hand. I'm glad you brought up JoJo Wallace, and for that matter, Kieran Bundy, because they both impressed a lot of Iona fans and opened some eyes too at the open practice. Did you see enough in terms of complete games from those guys to warrant a lot of minutes?
From Wallace, I think it's really just the scoring that's getting him on the floor. Some games will be JoJo Wallace games. Some games will be not JoJo Wallace games. And Tobin actually kind of sees that differently. He kind of says, oh, he's good enough to score whenever he's on the floor. It's like he'll just be consistent at that. As a freshman, I'm not certain he's there, but he's really talented. And Bundy was really impressive with the practice. I thought he was really hardworking. He was really good on the defensive end and athletic as well.
At the practice, before that practice, this is always happens when you see an internal scrimmage. Everybody looks fantastic. And so before that practice, I said, guys, I'm going to say right now, Tobin's not going 13 deep. And sure enough, after the practice, you felt like everybody could contribute a little bit. If you had to pick 2 or 3 guys that you just don't see getting a lot of minutes, who would they be?
Bernard, not incredibly impressed by his tape at St. Thomas More. Good prospect down the road, solid size for a point guard. Not ready. They have Jai and Winborn who are better. And probably, I mean, I think Hogarth will play. I just don't know how much if Rupert and Mundi stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing I asked Tobin about too.
And also with Jungers that he's going to play because of the different look that he gives them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what Tobin really likes with the roster is it's pretty versatile. You can go big and physical. You can go smaller and faster and like a pressing lineup. You can do a lot of different things here. All right. So one person I want to talk to you a bit more about is Clarence Rupert. Starting to get to know him a little bit. He's a vocal guy. I think we all obviously remember what he did at St. Peter's. Then we kind of lost touch with him a little bit, but I was thrilled when we landed him. I thought he is that kind of person who just sets an identity for your team. How important is he going to be for this team? Even if, like I said, he may not even make an all MAAC team just based on numbers, but how important is he?
He's the heart and soul. And his favorite cheesesteak is D'Alessandro's. Anyway, Philly guy, plays Philly tough. You can tell. Just you watch him play. You watch it at St. Peter's. I know you're not a Missouri Valley guy, but my co-host Jonathan Lidskin is a Missouri Valley guy, so I ended up watching the Valley a little bit. The guys, you can see it at Southern Illinois. He's still a tough guy. He's always been a tough guy, and he wants it. Like you can tell based on the way he talks to the media, the way he's talking online, how much this means to him. He really wants it. He's going to be the heart and soul of this team.
Okay. Well, like I said, when we opened, I only had Iona picked 3rd. You've got him 4th. I have him in that 13 and 7-ish kind of range in terms of a record. Ken Palm had him there today as well. What would you say? I mean, is the ceiling for this team, low 20 wins, 15 and 5, challenging for first place, or is it higher? Is it lower than that? What do you think?
They can win the league. Iona can absolutely win the league. There is 100% a scenario where the Gales win the league.
All right, I want to go to ask you about Iona's start to the non-conference schedule because I think it's kind of a bear. You open up at Princeton, then you're I'm already forgetting a game. Well, it's Princeton. There's at West Virginia in there. There's a home for Vermont. At Hofstra was the second game. I knew I was missing one. Home for Delaware. So that's 5 games. Iona could easily end up being
Cornell
1 and
too.
4 for those. What's that?
Cornell too.
And Cornell is the 6th game.
I'll be there.
At least that's at home as well. I mean, Iona can end up, 1 and 5. They can end up 3 and 3. I mean, if let's say Iona's 1 and 5, should they be worried?
No. I mean, obviously depends on how they get there. If they're 1 and 5 and they're getting blown out by 20, then yes, be very concerned. But I don't think that you should be concerned if Iona goes 2 and 4 and they lose to Hofstra by 3 and to Delaware by 2 and to Vermont by 6 and to West Virginia by 13. Like that's not really that concerning. Well, okay, because that would mean they beat Princeton, but like you know what I mean. Like
yeah.
If they lose games by like single digits and they're competitive the whole way, don't be concerned because every single one of those teams is going to be better than every other team in the MAAC. When it comes to, I mean, okay, maybe not Delaware. They lose a lot, but and speaking of Delaware, I think former Iona commit Isaiah Pasha is going to be one of the best rookies in the CAA this year.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, but just moving on to like that schedule, just moving back to that schedule. If they're competitive in those games, they'll be more than competitive in the MAAC. That's really what matters. I know they beat Colgate last year by 20 and it didn't matter. Then that's because the season's two completely different animals. The non-conference schedule can only give you a look at what you're looking at in the conference slate. If Iona goes 11-9, 10-10, it's like that's totally possible. If Iona goes 15-5, 16-4, that's totally possible. I think that they do have one of the higher floors in the conference. I think that in the top four are the four teams that I'm confident saying will have at least 10, 11 wins. I don't really think anyone else I can say that for certain about. But I also think that anyone in the top four can win 15 or 16 games.
All right. Well, Sam, take a break now that you've written 30,000 words.
Break. We have SEC preview, Big 12 preview tonight on Brackets, Bubbles, and Bitch Stealers. I know you guys are all MAAC head, but if you guys want to learn anything about the SEC or the Big 12, or you're just really interested in that stuff, Brackets, Bubbles, and Bitch Stealers, Big 10, Big East, ACC. So make sure you tune in for that.
Well, I mean, you don't breathe. I mean, thankfully you're young because that's how you can handle all this. Let's see if you're doing all this when you're my age.
Probably not. I'll probably be doing other things.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
Hopefully making a lot more money than I am right now.
It's coming. Well, thank you for coming on this podcast again and dropping your MAAC knowledge. Everybody, obviously you guys all know Sam by now if you're listening to this. So I know we all appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts, and we'll be catching up with you during the season for sure.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to our resident MAAC sicko, Sam Federman, and his 30,000 words. Hey, people, I've been telling you for months, hey, the season's coming. Guess what? It's here. The next time you hear from me, we're going to have played a couple of games. So enjoy the start of the season. We've all been itching to get here, and let's go Iona Gales.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the IonaHoops.com podcast. This podcast is a production of IonaHoops.com with publisher Guy Filatico. The opinions shared during this podcast are those of Guy Filatico, IonaHoops.com, and any featured guests. This podcast is not affiliated with Iona University Athletics or the university itself. Thank you for supporting IonaHoops.com.